Um, I, oh my god, how am I going to do this? I should probably start by admitting that I was never a highly sociable person. Or, at the very least, I don't consider myself a highly sociable person. Now, whenever I'm given an opportunity to communicate with others, whether it be surrounded by classmates or spend time with folks, I usually try to be by myself. I just think to myself about something that I watched earlier this week, or try to listen to some music on my iPod, just something simple like going through stuff in my head. I usually try to do that to pass the time whenever I feel bored about something, when I feel like I could have more fun doing something else in a specific situation. I guess it is because, most of the time I don't usually have the desire to be in a social background. The thing is, I usually prefer to be in my own little world where I don't have to worry about anyone interrupting me or talking to me, reprimanding me, expecting something from me. It can just be me walking around a circle thinking what I'm going to do while I have my own time. And you'd probably think that's a little bit lonely, and even if it is, I don't really feel bothered by it. I mean, when I'm by myself, I can do pretty much whatever I want. I can browse through the internet for stuff that I like to watch. I can listen to my music. I can type things. I can occasionally play a video game if I feel like I'm in the mood for it. The typical loner stuff that doesn't astray too far from the environment that I'm set in. Sometimes I do make time to, talk to whoever may be in the house, or, depending on where I am, I might talk to the group of people that are usually talking to each other about things that I may not be very interested in. Um, if I feel like I need to do something besides just being by myself, I might talk to someone. I might go up to my cousins who are talking to each other about something, my aunts and uncles, whatever family conversation that's going on over there in that specific room. But for the most part, I'm not exactly what you would call a sociable person. I I guess that kind of makes me antisocial, but it's not exactly something that I want to think about when I think about preferring to be by myself. It's just sometimes I just feel like I could experience more when I'm in a room by myself. Like when no one's around talking or interrupting me, I could just be pacing around, thinking to myself, and then this idea will come up, and then I try to enjoy myself with that idea. And sometimes, even if it gets a little repetitive, I think of ways to, spice things up and make sure that I don't bore myself out of my mind. Just trying to have fun while I'm in this little piece of solitude and seclusion from the rest of the world. Um, maybe that's not the best way to describe it. I can spend time with others when I can, and when I feel like it is something fun for me to do. But all in all, I usually just enjoy myself so much more when I'm just in my own room, just talking to myself, thinking about things, and listening to stuff, watching stuff, playing stuff. All of the usual stuff that people like to do when they're alone. Um, Something that I have always been interested about actually very curious, mind you, about myself is how I can have memories of something that I saw or experienced a long time ago, even though I feel like I should have forgotten it because it was so minor and brief and mundane. Like, for instance, I remember that I would go to this place downtown with my mom, where after she was done with an appointment, I would ask her to get me some gummy bears in this little store that was at the bottom floor. And I always enjoyed eating those gummy bears throughout the car ride home. I remember when I used to play on Sega Genesis, Grandma would think that I was so good at playing this game, and she would be like, holy cow! Like, she always said that every single time she saw me doing something, and it was pretty nice being complimented on my gameplay. I remember when the family had a get together at Grandpa's in the middle of the woods. I was fascinated by the tractor for some reason, and I put my hand somewhere where it shouldn't have gone. Don't worry, it wasn't cut off. I still have both my hands. But I did burn my palm pretty badly. Like, the instant I felt the heat, I pulled myself away, and I think I might have really screamed from the pain. And there was this bubble, this big, giant bubble, this giant molten mass of skin that was representing the severity of the burn. Like, it was there for I don't know how long, and I think I remember it something cartoonishly in my head. I think I just remember it had to be popped. So I don't know how it worked, but eventually my hand did get better, and as for touching the tractor where I shouldn't, I never did that again. And all of those things happened to me when I was just a little kid. And that's just to name a few things that I can remember from such a long time ago. No matter what age I might have been, from the moment that I learned how to recall and remember things. I can have a pretty selective long-distance memory in which I remember all of these things from so long ago, and these memories just come and go. I usually think to myself, oh yeah, I remember going through that, and I just proceed with the rest of the day. Like, it just comes and go, and I just walk it off like it never happened, although I still do remember it. I think a lot of people have talked about how hard it is moving to a new house, and I can actually sympathize with them. I fully understand how hard it can be moving into a new house, because my family has had to move, like, let me see, one, two, three times. We have moved at least 3 times in the last 20 years. So you can imagine how complicated it was. Our first living space was actually an apartment where, I lived a floor below my grandmother. We were living in the same building. I don't remember too much of it being small. I remember that I was always able to navigate throughout the apartment that we were in. I kind of remember it might have been a little bit bigger than I remember, but it also could have been smaller than I remember. And every once in a while, I would go upstairs to see my grandma, visit with her for a little while, watch something, and she would lull me to sleep whenever Mom failed to do so. And after that, I think it was maybe when I was 6, we moved to another house in Chicago, and it was a very, very small house. My mom at one point described it, it was the size of my aunt's basement. Like, it wasn't too small, but it was a very, very small house. Like, you could just walk around in a circle throughout the whole house and you'll have seen every single floor. There wasn't even a top floor. It was just this stairway that would take you up to the structure and then you would go inside to the house. And there was a basement underground, obviously. Um, we had a couple of hard times over there. Like at some point, it became hard to pay for stuff like cable, and but we still got by. We could still have food. We were still able to go to school. My mom still had a job. She kind of had to have a job because she and dad got divorced. Um, and then at some point, my uncle Bobby started living with us, and that kind of helped make our situation a little better. And then after he moved out into his own place, eventually mom got together with this guy named Robert, who also had his own son. Funny thing, they actually met each other in high school, and they ended up coming across each other again, and now they were living with us. So now it was my stepdad, my mom, my stepbrother, my sister, and me living in this house. And at some point we figured it was going to be really hard with 5 people in here. So we searched for another place. Eventually we moved to this area where in the Leiden district. It was our third house, and it had 2 floors. The first one went underground. It served as both the lower floor and the basement, and the upper floor was, where the living room and the kitchen was. We lived next door to the landlord, and he was kind of a dick to us. I actually still remember how well put together that house was. There was this wide room in the lower floor, it was like the playroom, where I could play my video games, browse on the internet and stuff. There were 2 middle-sized rooms in the lower floor, and me and my sister each took one. We made that our bedroom. And to the left of that floor was the laundry room, where it was a little bit dark and where we had the washing machine and stuff. And the door leading further to the left was the garage, where, we parked our cars. There were only 2 staircases, obviously. One led downstairs, one led upstairs. And there was a room where my stepbrother would sleep. He had his own room. Mom and stepdad had their own room where they slept together. It was a nice house. Everyone had their own room, and we still had like a playroom and a living room and a kitchen. And then some things happened between my stepbrother and my mother and stepdad. He went back to Texas with his mother and sisters, and after a couple of more years of living there, we moved to Robert's mother's house after she passed away. With this being Robert's mother's house, it was obviously going to be an old house. And boy, does it show. There's a couple of rooms that are really dirty. There's a couple of pieces of wall and ceiling that are kind of pushed out and crooked, sticking out. And oh my God, just earlier this week, there was a leak. There was a leak in the ceiling because there was so much snow. I think it was because the structure was so old, it couldn't hold up the water that melted from the snow, and it just started dripping, and it soaked my mom's and stepdad's bed, and now they have to wait until it dries before they can sleep in it again. Man, I still can't believe how we're able to manage a house like this, despite that it's so old. Like, there's loose handles, leaks in the basement and the garage whenever it rains, creaking noises in the stairs whenever I walk up and down stairs to and from my room. Man, this house is so old, and if we're gonna be living here any longer, we gotta do something about it. Um, I'm also, admittedly, a very highly nostalgic person. Like, growing up in the 90s, I experienced so many things while I was growing up on TV, in theaters, and other forms of entertainment that you could think of. I think back to just all the movies I've seen, all the TV shows I've seen. Admittedly, I am a 90s kid, so naturally I got pages of all the television stuff I've experienced. Whether it was Cartoon Network or Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Toon Disney, Kids WB, Jetix, Fox Kids, PBS, Nick Jr., ABC, ABC Kids, one Saturday morning that was a special on ABC Kids, and all the programs I've seen from each and every one of those stations. I don't think I would have enough time to list all of them here. I just grew up with so much nostalgic material. I always remembered really enjoying myself when I got up in the morning to watch those cartoons, but looking back on it now, what I truly find fascinating are the commercials. These were these special bumpers that represented the station, and they would play in between the show and the commercials, and sometimes off of each other. I mean, at least with the TV shows themselves, you can get those years later on DVD, but those commercials, those bumpers, that they had so much fun making them. They just knew how to attract your attention, how to entertain you in between commercials, waiting for that moment when the show would start up again. They were just such amazing bumpers. And the only way you can see them anymore is if you come across them on YouTube. They would have these hour-long loops of Cartoon Network bumpers, Nickelodeon bumpers, Disney Channel bumpers, Fox Kids bumpers, bumpers for all sorts of different stations from years ago. It just feels so great seeing these bumpers from such a long time ago. Just recently, I found this video featuring Kids WB bumpers and those little things that they do in commercials. I'm not kidding. It's an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes of those specialized bumpers and commercials that you would look forward to seeing while you waited for the show to come back on. They always knew how to present themselves and the shows that they were advertising. It was so amazing. And not just for Kids WB, it's for all of the stations that I grew up with that had cartoons that I enjoyed watching so much. And these are all from so long ago. Sometimes, whenever I have the chance, I might watch some of these bumpers, and I might think to myself, "Oh Jesus Christ, I got so old." Oh, man, those were the days. And that's not including all of the video games I've played. I've played all sorts of consoles from Nintendo, from Sony, Microsoft, and Sega. If you name a console in the comments section, I have most likely played on it. I've experienced virtually all of them. And I've played so many games in my life, too. Game franchises that still stick with me even to this day. I usually threw a little fit whenever my character died. I was like, "Oh, damn it, you stupid!" But in all fairness, I really enjoyed playing video games when I was growing up. And movies, there were so many movies that I enjoyed watching, whether they were live action or animated. There's just so many to choose from. I can't think of one experience to sum all of it up together. I guess the one that stands out to me the most is when I watched Pokemon the first movie when it first came out, and I was such a Pokemon junkie at the time. I watched every single episode of the anime. I would not want to miss a single episode of the show. I loved it so much. When Ash's death scene came up, it wasn't necessarily death, he was turned to stone, but it's considered death. I was crying like a bitch. Like, oh my god, this just came at me so hard. I don't know why. It just did. And that was amongst my earliest movie-going experiences that I watched Pokemon the first movie and I cried at that scene and I was just enjoying myself watching it so much because I was so obsessed with Pokemon. You wouldn't believe it. And as I got older, I got to enjoy more widespread varieties of animation and cartoons and television, whether it was on Fox, or it was anime, or it was Toonami, or Adult Swim, movies and cartoons from foreign countries. I love all of these nostalgic things so much, I usually act them out in my head. And sometimes I say the scenes out loud, word for word, every single piece of dialogue. Like I can reenact the scene that happened in this show or movie or video game. For example, if you asked me to reenact Homer when he became the Incredible Hulk, I would do it. I would just put so much of my all into reenacting that to the best of my ability. I just enjoy doing that so much. Yeah, I was having a really, really good run. And then came the complications. I mean, obviously, I did have to get older, and as I got older, the world around me became more apparent to me, and I became more aware of the world around me. The rise of the internet did help, though. I still got to enjoy myself browsing on the internet, and then I found out about iPods. All of these different varieties of music that I was interested in. I just wanted to listen to it on this small device. I figured out how to get all of this music into this one small device. When I first started using an iPod, I was fascinated by it. Like, how does this thing work? Like, I am listening to 300 different pieces of music on this small device, and it's mobile. It was just so incredible, like, I could hardly put it down. And this is where the really major fun stuff started to slow down, at least for me. Truthfully, when I was little, I tended to panic about a few things. I might have gotten scared of something, I might have been really afraid of something, whether it was being in a dark room, or if there was a water leak and I didn't know how to fix it. Yeah, sometimes I could have been very easily frightened. I remember when I was living in my second house, there was this pipe that sprung a leak, and it just kept running water, running and running and running, and it wouldn't stop, and I didn't know what it meant. What was going to happen with all of this water? Was it just going to keep going? I was just so scared, and my mom she was struggling to keep me calm. I was just so afraid that I never experienced something like this. Of course, Uncle Danny came over and he fixed the plumbing, and for a long time, about several years after that, ever since that leak being sprung, I have been very nervous around dripping faucets and running water because I was just so afraid of what happened that night and the possibility of it repeating. Whenever there was the news of there was this leak in the school, there was a flooding in the school, I was just I was basically very nervous around gathered amounts of water in one spot because, a little water wouldn't hurt, but a lot can kill you, if you drown in it. I forgot when exactly it happened, but at some point, I wasn't afraid of that anymore. I wasn't afraid of dripping faucets or any floods in the school or running water because it was all. I eventually learned that it was all part of a piping or plumbing problem. And with the right care, those problems can easily be fixed. And even if they're not fixed right away, they don't result in too much a long-term damage. Of course, water became the least of my problems. You go through your childhood being told by all sorts of figures that you look up to that the world is a safe place, it's a place where you can have fun and enjoy yourself, and as you get older, that message starts to slip away. And when you reach your high school years, you start to see that the world is not necessarily a happy place. I guess it all really started for me when I had to do a school report on the Japanese invading China during World War II and how they were enslaved and murdered. It was practically a miniature Holocaust over there. Like, learning more and more about this, I felt haunted. I just felt very, very haunted by knowing this type of stuff, and that it's a thing that has stemmed throughout human history. I started getting into reading news articles on global news about countries at war and fighting and conflict and feuds. As I kept reading these articles, I started to feel very, very worried about things that were happening out there, things that I had no power over, something that I have no control over. Endangered species, global warming, countries that are having all of these wars and mass killings. Just, it was so horrible. And that's not including the fact that I kept hearing about how the economy was getting worse and all of these rumors that civilization is going to collapse at some point. Before all that, however, I was about 15 years old when I saw this History Channel special talking about 2012. Apparently, for a very long time, civilizations have been building up 2012 where it's going to be the end of the world. And naturally, I was very, very scared. And I just kept so much of that fear inside of me. Like, if you are an easily impressioned person like I am, you could imagine the fear and horrification that everything you've ever known and loved could be destroyed within the next 2 to 3 years by something that cannot be prevented. And as the years went by, I kept that fear inside of me. I kept it a secret from my family. I was just so worried that 2012 was going to be the end of it. However, as we got closer to 2012, there were these all of these stories about how 2012 was a superstition and how many predictions like this have happened in the past. It was just like I was very worried about what could happen, and I was very worried about losing a lot of things that I grew to care about. And so came the fateful day of December 21st, 2012. I hoped that nothing bad would happen. And, well, it's almost 2016, and I'm still here, breathing. And I think the 2012 experience, when I was all worried about it, it was actually a very important experience for me. It was a way of me learning that you shouldn't believe every single thing that you say, especially if it's something bad. And you don't have to worry about these uncertain topics because these are topics that no one has the answer to, really. So there's no reason to dwell on it anymore because no human being living is going to have the answer to these type of topics. So with the 2012 thing behind me, I could focus on my life. And within the next 2 years, it just started to feel really, really empty. I mean, aside from a dysfunctional family and a lot of problems with all the schools that I've been to all of my life, even to this day, I can still suffer from a panic attack. If something is happening and I don't know why it's happening, I start to get very nervous, and that nervousness escalates to this hyperactive fear. I just don't know what to do. I'm quivering. I'm just scared about how people around me are going to react to this thing that's affecting me. And it just takes so much time for me to finally calm down from those panic attacks. And I'm actually wondering when the next one is going to happen. It's been a real, real long and hard road these past 23 years. Mom has actually taken me to a number of therapists, like there was this Hispanic one, there was this Jewish one, there was this one under the employment of the school, and I think I would like to believe that they have done a few things to help me, to teach me something, but nothing that I was talking to them about could have possibly prepared me for all of the things that I was going to experience from that point onward, from 2012 to halfway through 2015. It only felt like yesterday that I was playing that VHS on repeat, that Journey to the North Star to rescue it, and it was one of those movies where your parents take a picture of you and they stick that picture onto the animation. It makes you into the main character of the movie. It was called Journey to the North Star. Another thing that I remember growing up with. It only seemed like yesterday that I just kept putting that VHS on repeat, watching it over and over, enjoying myself as a kid in my youth. And now it's the end of 2015, and in that time, there is just so much wrong with humanity. There is so much wrong with the Homo sapien race. It's a thing that has been stuck in my mind for a long time now, and it just really bothers me. Ever since that high school report I did on Japan invading China, I have been learning about all of these selfish human acts stemming throughout human history, and how, in a way, our society has gotten to the point where there are no more morals. Every once in a while, I visit my grandma, and we really enjoy spending time with each other. And the one thing that she always brings up is how different life is today compared to when she was a kid. Like, she could have never imagined the world that exists today. The worst thing she ever experienced, the most bad thing that she ever saw, was a fist fight when she was in middle school. It was like a 5-minute fist fight between two kids, and it was quickly broken up, and the fight stopped. That was the worst thing she ever saw when she was growing up in school. And nowadays, you got people sneaking in weapons and guns and knives and all that bad stuff wherever they're going, whether it be school or some other place that you would not expect something horrible to happen. All of these news stories that are just spreading so much doubt and loss in hope for humanity. There's these gang fights in downtown that are killing people, including kids. Kids being executed because of some feud between the two gangs. ISIS is scaring the shit out of the entire planet, and it's working. Donald Trump is running for president. Protests in the street about a policeman that used police brutality that resulted in the death of a civilian. All of these really, really bad news stories about someone getting killed or someone dying in some horrible event that was intentionally caused by someone else, and it's become so common. Every other day you find out about someone getting killed or shot or stabbed or ISIS making a threat. It's happening so much I don't even think I'm missing anything anymore. Mom has been telling me for a while that I need to start watching the news. What's the point in watching the news anymore? I already know what they're going to cover. People are killing each other. The economy is getting worse. Terrorism is scaring people. That is literally the only thing that has been on the news since the 9/11 attacks. And I'm telling you, it all stems from humanity's constant screw-ups. And there's so many ways that it has screwed up. Forming gangs in cities where people are killing each other and children are scared to go to sleep at night because they're afraid that they'll be shot in their sleep. Politicians who are unqualified to handle the trust that they've been given, making choices that only make the situation worse. Bigoted groups who think that their country is better than any other country in the world, despite that their country is just as crappy as any other country in the world. Feuds and conflicts between countries that are preventing us from working on other problems, causing irreversible damage to the environments that we live in and depend on with the pollution that we've created. Removing animals from natural habitats, furthering the damage to that environment, and doing so many things that is endangering their existence, whether it's hunting them for money or taking them out of an environment that they were naturally growing up in and placing them in one that they have no way of knowing how to survive in. Even before the rise of technology in the 1900s, humanity has had a history of nothing but causing misery for itself, dating back thousands of years. War, slavery, genocide, racism, sexism, rape, religious extremism, invading land that isn't theirs to invade. Humanity has the intelligence and sense of morality that it needs to make the future a less uncertain future, and it just won't do anything about it. So, I guess what I can say is I've basically kind of become somewhat of a misanthrope. It's not that I hate humanity, but I just don't trust it anymore. I don't trust it the way that it's going. I don't trust it because of how much uncertainty it has created, to the point where we have no way of knowing what the world will be like 30 years from now. And I'm thinking to myself, why would anybody want to be a part of that? Why would they want to be part of a society consisting of people that are just so full of themselves that all of these terrible things just keep happening? I know it's wrong to feel that way, but I really do feel detached from the rest of the world because so much of it doesn't make sense to me anymore. Maybe that's why I prefer being in my own little world, because when I'm there, my mind is taken off of the fact that there is just so much wrong on this planet. And no one likes to constantly be reminded of that. I mean, it is important to provide for yourself, but you also want to enjoy yourself with the time that you are given, as much as you can. Now, I know that there are people out there who are aware of all these bad things, and they do want to fix these problems, and they do want to make the world a better place. And I'm very grateful for that. But then you have those extremists who are just so obsessed with their way of fixing what they think is wrong with the world, those social justice warriors, those politically correct fanatics. It becomes less about fixing the problems that are in our society and more fulfilling their view on what a perfect society is. There is a difference between being an activist and being a social justice warrior. You understand that, right? And that political correctness stuff. I mean, South Park just did an entire season on it. With so much chaos and uncertainty these days, it is just so much to wrap my head around, and I just try to keep it as simple as I can. And let me tell you, I don't need social justice warriors. I don't need political correctness in order to tell anyone who is watching this what is right from wrong. I have become so detached from my own species, and I can still grasp a pretty good idea of what is wrong. If you kill someone and show no remorse for their death, you're an asshole. If you force someone to have sex with you against their will, you're an asshole. If you are put in a position of power and don't use it to fix the problems that are going on and only use it to satisfy and preserve your own stance, you're an asshole. If you are against gays and lesbians and LGBT, if you think that America should be ashamed of itself because it passed a law that same-sex couples can now get married, you're an asshole. If you're making life difficult for transgenders because you think it's horrible that they don't see themselves as the gender that they were born as, you're an asshole. If you're promoting violence and destruction towards a different group of people or another country, you're an asshole. If you're against somebody or a group of people because they have a skin color different from yours, you're an asshole. If you're using a disability as an insult or a slang towards somebody in any situation where it would boast your ego, you're an asshole. If you think it's wrong for someone to be a fan of a specific TV show or movie or video game, you're an asshole. Now I know that I've said a lot of things in the last 42.5 minutes. But if there's anything that I can take from all of this, it's that you have to make the most of what you got. I enjoy my life in my current situation to the best of my ability, and I do it despite knowing about all the horrible stuff that's happening out there. I can't spend my entire life worrying about stuff, because if I spent all of my time worrying, I would miss out on all of the nice things that life has to offer. I'm still getting by in my current situation, and I have plenty of things that keep me happy. And one of the biggest factors that keeps me happy is the nostalgia of all the things that I experienced while I was growing up. Whether it's memories of TV shows I watched, movies I saw, video games I played, books I read, even when I spent quality time with my folks. And if there's anything that I've really gotten interested in after all these years, it's my fascination for stories. For a while now, I like to imagine stories in my head, just thinking about this kind of stuff, thinking about how it would play out, the beginning, the middle, the end, and the closure for all of its characters. And that's the thing that all of the TV shows and movies and video games I experienced have in common. They all have something to do with storytelling. All of these different worlds, all of these different people, all of these different perceptions of reality. I actually feel like I want to do something like that someday. Just print my story onto a bunch of papers and then share it with the world. I know it's not something that I can do right away, and I know that it's not something that's going to be easy to do. But you know what? I've gotten this far in life. I mean, my teeth got fucked up in a bike accident, but almost 24 years and still going. So you're probably wondering at this point, what am I going to talk about next? I mean, this is my confession mini-series, and there are a couple of more things that I want to talk about before I can properly, proceed with the content creation for this channel. Well, I suppose I do know what I could talk about next, but that next episode in particular is going to be very, very, very personal. You'll get it when you see the title. Well, until next time, good luck out there, and take care of yourselves. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.